Hello, my name is Martin Dougiamas. I'm most well known as the founder and CEO of Moodle, which is an open source learning management system. And but I'm also the founder of something called Open EdTech, and I'm a director on Open Education Global as well. And I really want to talk to you about my view of what's happening in education this year, based on having been in the online education industry for 20 years, and then let's look at the future and some possible futures and where things could be, and talk about that. So Moodle first. Let me talk about Moodle. Some of you may know of Moodle, or you used it somewhere, or you've heard of it at least, but maybe not. So the mission of Moodle is about empowering educators to improve our world. We are really trying to give more power to teachers to do more with what they have, and to be able to use everything around them. And of course, that means digital technologies. The way we're doing it, the vision, the thing we're building is the most effective platform that we can for learning, for teachers to do their work. We have a very strong values base to our work. We treat education as a huge value, as the most important thing. Openness, we're open source, but also open in transparent in lots of things, as much as we can be, and more as we can be. Integrity, we be very honest. We try and always do what we're doing and just stay real, Respect for all cultures, all languages, different points of view. You need to in this world, and it's important. And for an open project to be successful, everyone does need to respect each other and work together. And lastly, it's about innovation. We try not to, be a company that controls an innovation and sells it. We try and be a company that allows our users to innovate and for everyone to innovate together. Moodle is also registering as a B Corporation, a certified B Corporation, which just puts a lot of our ethos into, more hard-coded in the DNA, and going through this certification on social impact. So let's look at 2020 for us. Moodle does a lot of things. You may know about a Moodle LMS. We have a lot of other tools as well. We have a Moodle for Workplace. We have Moodle apps that connect to those things. We have a number of projects that work on resources. Educators also need resources as well as tools. So we have partners that provide support all around the world. We have Moodle Cloud, which is a SaaS platform. Moodle Net, which is a new social network we're building. Development partners all around the world that we work with. And that's how we get resources to educators. And lastly, we want educators to develop their own skills. So we have a certification, and we have a lot of Moodle Moots. There are conferences that we just finished one this week. Something very quickly run through so you can understand what's going on here. The learning management system is the biggest thing that most people know about. And this is used by universities and schools and companies as a place, their own, let's say, their own brick and mortar institution online, and classrooms can happen in there with all kinds of activities. About 2/3 of higher education in the world uses Moodle for free. It's open source free software. And that makes us the most mainstream platform that gets used in higher education. It's also used a lot in other sectors, as I said. It's about 166,000 institutions have registered their sites around the world. And just to give you an indication of what happened around COVID time, last few months, that number was 100,000 in February. And that's how many more sites started using Moodle in the recent times. At its peak, 92% of school learners were out of school. That was in April. 1.6 billion affected learners. These are stats from UNESCO. All over the world during the past few months, we've had increased engagement in every possible sense, at individual level, at institution level, at government level, working with UNESCO, working with World Bank and things like that in lots of projects. So it's exciting times, and I've been seeing a lot more, having a lot more interesting thoughts about the future, let's say. Now, Moodle LMS also has a developer ecosystem. So 1,700 plugins have been developed on top of the Moodle platform, and they extend the functionality in lots of ways. So we have a very large developer community as well, building this platform. And our big future, the work for the next year, is a lot of UX work. We're tending to really reboot the interface for the end of next year. We have a Moodle app. We have native apps that connect to Moodle, and for students, 100% of their time can just be in the app. This is extremely useful for low bandwidth environments in Africa, in Asia, in Australia, where I'm from. You don't always have good internet, and so you need to have the ability to download courses onto your device and do forums and quizzes and assignments and all these things on your device, and when you have internet, synchronize back again. We have a Moodle for Workplace, which is a Moodle customized for training and corporate training, and it's used by a lot of companies now, very large ones sometimes, to do that kind of training. It's been very successful, and this is what it looks like. Just a quick shot of what Moodle looks like. Our Moodle Cloud has got something like 60,000 Moodles running on it. It's a SaaS platform. Not much more to say about that now, but just, that's something that we run centrally. But most people who need help or need hosting, they turn to our Moodle partners. And we have a network of 100 companies around the world that we've, over the past 20 years, have built up relationships that they do those services. 10% of what they earn on those services comes back to Moodle. And this is the main business model, the main sustainability model that Moodle as an open source project has. We don't rely on grants or funding or government money, or we don't rely on people to work for free and just be pure volunteers. We've built a business framework that enables us to be funded through things that people need anyway, through services. Now, our Moodle social network we're building is a whole new stack of software. It's intended to be for educators to collaborate together, to work on collecting and curating resources from everywhere else. And that is now very closely tied to the learning management system. So as a teacher is creating a course, they can reach out and find good resources quickly and then use them in their courses. This is brand new, and we're just still building at Moodle Net. And our education, it's very important for teachers when building up their skills to learn them. And just throwing people into a piece of software is rarely enough. The software has to be super simple. And even then, you can give a social network to your great-grandmother without showing her some things to do. They'll only be using a piece of that, so they won't be using all of it very well. So we've built a certification. It's a very heavy thing. This is 22 competencies in a framework with 6 major areas. This is not our design. This is actually a European standard, but no one has fully implemented this as a certification, and we now have. And that's something that we take advanced teachers through so they can be certified, and that can mean a lot in a lot of different scenarios. And we hold events all the time. This week we had our Moodle Moot Global, which was online, and we had 1,300 really engaged participants building and working on and talking about the future of Moodle for the whole week. 300 speakers, and the community is just very much engaged together in building the future of Moodle together. So that's some background if you didn't know about Moodle, or maybe if you did, some things that we're doing and to understand where I'm coming from, because now I want to talk more about the future, and I needed you to know my context. Yeah. So let's look at the future from where we are now and the kind of things that we're looking at and trends. The SDGs should probably be on every presentation. These have been developed over, decades really. But this is the latest expression of 17 major sustainable development goals from the UN. And they identify the biggest problem areas that affect all of us as a species and the planet in general. So these are important. And education itself is one of these things, but literally education is what drives all of these things. You can't achieve any of them without good education. So we see the future of education technology as being very much engaged in how do we solve these problems through education. There are some pretty big, let me highlight some of these problems that we have in our current environment. You know, things are shrinking very suddenly. Look at this conference, look at how we can do things online these days, how one tweet on one side of the world can affect somebody minutes later on the other side of the world, or maybe change a whole government's policy. This has been accentuated by everyone being forced to go online in the last few months, of course, but it was happening for a while. There's more data everywhere. So we're all facing more and more information coming at us, but we don't really know all the time what's real and what's fake. It's hard to fully identify or confirm things that are real. And with AI now generating more content, that humans cannot tell the difference from other human-generated content, somebody can press a button and generate a whole Wikipedia of fake articles if they want. There's a possibility now with the kinds of AI algorithms that, say, OpenAI have developed recently. That leads to a very interesting situation. How do we trust? And how can we learn if the things we need to learn are not super clear? So we have issues with artificial intelligence interfering with the things we should be learning. Corporate influence over news is quite strong, and government. A lot of governments are getting more tied to corporate interests, and those are being reflected through news and through media, and starting to cause problems, as you can see happening in many countries around the world right now. There are issues out there that are too complex for anyone to even understand, quite a lot of them. And everyone is seeing, you know, the old metaphor of an elephant, and you see pieces of the elephant. We have 8 billion people now. It should top out at 10 or 11 billion people, according to data. But still, we're going to have that many people in the future struggling to make sense of what's around them, right? This is the biggest problem we have to face. So for me, the future is in the quality of education. I really want to stress that word, quality. This is an article from in Australia in the past couple of weeks. And what the government here are doing is they're changing fees on public universities to shift people away from humanities subjects, to shift them towards engineering subjects. And governments do this very often to drive certain types of graduates. But what they're doing is really pushing higher education to be training. They're becoming training organizations to train people for certain corporate needs. It's a problem. Now, what I would love to see universities be instead is I would love to see universities modeling a better world. So imagine a university that might have 50,000 people or 100,000 people. That's the size of a small city. As a city, it has all of the problems that the world has. It has to think about energy. It has to think about democracy and decision making. It has to think about, or it's like it could be a microcosm of the earth or of the country, a place where people come together, where research and teaching are very closely aligned, because the teaching is actually on real problems. So we have real problems in the world, the SDGs, and we solve them in miniature in universities. And I really think there's a potential there. And this is how universities used to be, really. You would have, professors who are gurus, say, who had very high reputations, attracting students just to come and be with that teacher, because that teacher had a research program and a development agenda that you would just be part of the team and, travel together. With our training method of thinking about things, that's going away. So I think we need to bring that back. Now, people say this is very difficult, but if we don't make universities the place where we forge new knowledge and create the news and solve these problems, then the places where this stuff is going to happen out here in these large communication systems, right? ICT systems, to put a very broad term on it. But in there is a lot of conversation, a lot of algorithms, a lot of corporate interest, a lot of, all these companies are driven by profit, and they will do things to increase profit. And if that's their motivation, if that's the main reason for that entity to exist, it can't really be an open infrastructure that can allow us to solve all the problems, because in a way these sorts of corporate entities are causing a lot of the problems. So what we need to do is get our educators and students in every field working and learning together inside institutions and also between institutions. The best way I know how to do that is with openness and with communities, and that's how Moodle spread to be in 2/3 of the universities around the world. So let's look at those tools we're working on again, and let's look at an alternative picture. Broadly, globally, there's open education technology is the tools. You have open education resources. They are the resources, the things and information and things you might other need apart from tools. And then there's this the final piece is the open recognition. The badges is one way of saying that. But once you've developed skills, how do you prove to other people you have those skills? How do you represent your knowledge and your skills so that you can now use them and be a useful part of a team and in the future? Well, right now, probably a lot of people's answer will be, oh, I just put it on LinkedIn or something. But, do we just want people listing things on that website? Is that where all this happens? I don't really think so. So there are open ways of doing this. So let's look at them at those three things in turn. And first I want to talk about open EdTech. So the core idea here is that education organizations and ministries should be able to choose to own their infrastructure, not just rent it. If you're renting a platform and you can't change it, you are driven subtly and more increasingly with AI and all the other things I talked about, you're driven more and more towards an agenda of someone else. If you're able to own the infrastructure and it's yours, even if you get people to help you with services around that, but if it's yours, you're able to develop it, research it, modify it, grow it, experiment with it. And that tight connection between the tool and the activity is enforced, it's reinforced. And so you're able to redefine what is your class, what is your university, what is your organization, without the restrictions of, oh, well, I have to do it this way because the tool told me to. So we had a meeting in Barcelona to kick off a open EdTech group, and these were some of the people who came that first meeting, universities and software projects and researchers. And we worked hard on a definition of open EdTech, and we found that it fit very well with these 5 SDGs in itself as a project. And these are the kinds of the main projects that we thought would really fit an open EdTech definition. So these are all open source projects that are being developed in very many different ways. They have their own sustainability models. And basically the idea here is that imagine if all these products worked very closely together in terms of integrations and services, and made it so that an institution could just say, yes, I want this and this and this and this and this, and it just worked. So how do we make that whole process easier for institutions to choose? So some of the projects we have in mind to work on, this first one here is a globally federated education cloud. And the concept here, and if anyone's interested, please ping me. If anyone's watching this and is interested in this particular one, I really want to know. The idea with a globally federated education cloud is that you need a place to put the data. It could be the skills recognition, it could be other sorts of data you have, but education-related data. Currently, there is no one place. There's this .org and this .com and this and this. But imagine if, say, every university contributed one server, and those servers had a distribution where they all connected together, and now you had a kind of an impromptu cloud. And there was lots of duplication and sharding and, you know, good technologies to do this. But when you put something in there, it stayed there forever. And even if half the nodes dropped out, all the data would be retained. And there are many precedents to this, even BitTorrent, right, from, you know, decades ago. So integration I mentioned between us. We're going to be working on getting funding into Open EdTech, because a lot of big organizations or countries or ministries will put happily millions of dollars towards buying a proprietary software. We want to try and make it easier for them to put it towards open software, so that they get the more benefits and everybody gets the same benefit. We really want to solve this global recognition of learning, and we need to work on how we educate institutions about this stuff too. So that's some of the stuff we're working on there. There is a website if you're interested in more. It's not quite complete, it's very new, but it's going to be an Open EdTech association based in Brussels. And if you're interested, go there and just keep an eye on it as it develops. Second part I wanted to mention is the open education resources. So there is a whole movement of open education resources, and these are documents, course content, or videos that are openly licensed and that are generally designed for education purposes. Last November, at UNESCO, they finally completed a recommendation, which is quite a strong guidance given by UNESCO to all the world governments. And that recommendation, which was decided upon by a unanimous vote from all countries, except the US, I believe, this vote says that money and efforts should go towards prioritizing open education resources. We really want to strengthen it, nurture it, facilitate it, encourage it. Look at these words. So everyone agrees this is where it should be. You shouldn't have to pay for textbooks. You shouldn't have to pay for content. Because education is a basic human right, it makes sense that the tools for that learning, the content, the resources that you need should be easily available. And it's a trend. And anyone who is fighting that trend is going to fight a losing battle, because this is so big and has so much momentum behind it with, everything, Creative Commons, all that stuff. This is the future. So let's really just build the tools around that. It's good to see this happening. And the third part I mentioned was about recognition and the recognizing skills. So Open Badges is the best standard we have for that. Unfortunately, we don't really have infrastructure in place yet to really make it usable. I don't think anybody applying for a job with us has ever given me a list of open badges to say, well, these are all the things I can do. It's not happening yet. And one of the reasons is, as I said before, there is no neutral global infrastructure in which you can put all that information and which helps you put information there. So there is a group called the Open Recognition Alliance that I just want to give a shout out to, who are focused on this problem. Well, not so much the technology, but at least on how to promote open badges and use them properly. And so they're working on that too. So that's the third part of the puzzle. And I think when you put all these three things together, you have an infrastructure for the future that can last 100 years. Why not 1,000 years? Because we need to be planning and we need to be building things for the long term here. And this is something that worries me with most of what I hear. You have companies that start up and they say, oh, we're building this product, and and they're thinking 1, 2, 3 years, and so on. And then companies come and go, right? So many startups fail, so many things are not happening. Even 10 years seems short. I think as we've kind of hit a point as a society where as a globe, we've wired ourselves up. The internet has now, been around for 50 years, but now it's in everybody's hands. Almost everybody has some access to the internet, and we've kind of reached a point where, okay, we have the basic hardware to get information around. Now let's take it up a level. How do we work on our education infrastructure? How do we work on our health infrastructure? How do we work on these infrastructures and globally? Because it's a small planet. So in education, I think these are the directions where we're going, and that's something that I'm very involved in working on and being part of. And if you're interested in any of this, love you to contact me. Email would be the best, martin@moodle.com. And I'll happily have a conversation on any of these topics and see maybe where we can connect things together. You can follow me I'm on Twitter at Moodler at the moment, and happy to engage. So thanks for the time to talk, and if there's any questions, I'm obviously happy to take them now. So the problem of authority for open badges is quite well worked out, actually. The original design of open badges was had a mindset that a institution with natural authority, grants a badge to a individual who, receives it gratefully. I'm exaggerating, but it's got that model in mind. Whereas open recognition are talking much more about individual recognition. If a lot of people recognize me as being good at Moodle because, I've shown it in many ways, and say 1,000 people say, yeah, I'm good at Moodle. Say I give you a badge that says you're good at something in Moodle, it's going to have a heavy weight. And so there is a way to do recognition in a kind of a network sense. It becomes a network issue of these kind of weights. And there's a lot to do there, but we need to do it globally. It can't work very easily at as it is currently in little silos here and there and short-term projects. We need to think, what is the infrastructure? Let's build it. Any more questions? I could do a little song and dance while we're waiting, but we have so many projects ongoing, and it's such an interesting time at the moment with that. This will need to be functioning globally to actually work or not, is the question. There are different levels. So, for example, for the internet to work globally, we needed agreement on TCP/IP, and all of those technologies at a low level that are now allow networks to work had to be worked out, and that's the IEEE and other engineering task forces and all these standard setting bodies. Standards are a very, very big part of things, but the standards go so far. We have standards for video, standards for audio, standards for document formats. We don't have standards for courses. There are some proposed, but nothing's really standardized. We don't have standards for how you run an education institution. We don't have real standards for how you become an online teacher. There are higher and higher standards, and some of it has got to be embedded in tools. So it's a mix of tools and standards that need to be created. And yes, I do think if we're facing global problems, to do them in a coordinated way, we should try and develop things that are global. All right, well, that seems to be the end of the questions. Thank you very much for the time. I really appreciated being able to speak with you. Reach out if I can be helpful. And thank you for your work. I'll be watching some more Campus Party over the weekend. See ya.